This Liberty Sports Update is brought to you by Beacon Credit Union.
Last week, I thought we had a really great week of preparation. I thought we had a really solid plan. I think when it came down to it, when we watched the tape, it was a lack of execution. I think we were outmanned at times. And then once you started going backwards, you just didn't feel as comfortable or as confident as a player, making the throws downfield or, making those blocks on the edges. But I thought our guys fought the entire game. Regardless of what the scoreboard said, our guys were dialed in and they were trying to make plays. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for is for guys to just keep fighting regardless of what the score was. This week's opponent, they're a very physical football team on defense. We watched them beginning of the year take on Minnesota. Those guys were fighting their tails off. They had some injuries early on, and then when we got to them, they were down a couple guys, and they were still fighting. And since our loss to those guys early on in the year, they continued to fight. I think they had one more win since us playing them, but they got some of those guys who were injured back, and they're still fighting. They lost a tough one last week up there at BYU, but I know these guys will be fired up to come play us this week.
Started out the game, you guys were moving the ball pretty well against Auburn, got across midfield, and things kind of stalled out a little bit. But were you? I guess what did they do after that? And were you a little surprised that you weren't able to move the ball as efficiently as the game went on?
They didn't change really anything from what they've shown on tape in weeks past. Our plan was going to be able to just push the ball down the field when we could, and then hit the intermediate throws, the slants. And there was times last week where, we thought we would have gotten a call on some of those slants, and we didn't, and those were drive killers. There's probably 4 series where we call a slant, and there's a guy wrapped around a guy's back, and we don't get the call. Nonetheless, when you're in that situation, you got to put the ball where they can only get it, because you can't rely on the officials to make that call every single time, and so they really didn't change anything that they had shown from weeks past. It was just lack of execution.
Is that as tough and physical a defense as you've coached against?
Oh, yeah. A lot of those guys are going to be playing on Sunday now, and so for us, that was a great barometer for our guys to say, hey, listen, you want to know what it's supposed to look like. You want to know what the twitch is, the size is, the strength is. What you just faced is what it looks like on Sunday. So at the end of the day, if you can win and compete against that, if you can fight and figure out a way to be successful against that, then anything else that you go against in the future, you'll be well prepared for.
I'll ask you about Buckshot, and certainly the last few games, I don't know if it's the accuracy's been off or what are interceptions aren't always the quarterback's fault, but just kind of take me through some of what's been going on with him. Just some of the game I was watching on Sunday or Saturday last week, it looked like he was maybe missing on some throws. Just kind of break down what you've seen over the last few games.
Yeah, I'll just start with the last game. The very first pick, we had an RPO on, and it was a slant behind a linebacker there, and I thought it was mistargeted. Personally, I thought it could have been thrown out in front. I think he would agree. But the gentleman who made a play on that had, some creepy length on his arms. And so the guy was over here, was able to flick it out of the air over there and make a play on it, So that was just a targeting deal. I thought he made the right read, the right decision, just an errant throw. Trying to think. There was 3 other turnovers. 2 of them I want to say were fumbles. One was a strip fumble. And then the other one was he was trying to avoid taking a sack, and he went down, and the guy swatted out his hand. I'm trying to think what that second interception was.
Stubs across the middle.
Stubs across the middle.
From the left.
Mm-hmm.
Safety behind caught it.
Oh, yeah, it was a vertical read. Thank you. And there was a window there about anywhere 8 to 10 feet, and I think – he really just mistargeted it. It was the right read once again. It was the guy that was behind Stubbs that made the play. It was the safety that made the play. So that goes to tell you, it was the right read. Obviously, it was an off-target throw. But those 2 interceptions where he threw last week were really just off-target throws. Had the ball been put on the body or out in front, it's a different case. The week before at UVA, the last one of the game that he threw, there was a conversion where Antonio just took it, and Buckshot had no choice but to put it up. The problem was Antonio ran out of bounds, and there was no way that we're going to come down with that football. So though it goes down as Buckshot's interception, there were some things that played into it that really weren't his fault per se. The one prior to that was a B.J. Farrell target where we were in a play action pass, and B.J. took the middle, and he wasn't quite sure if he needed to put it on him or float it over top. You can't float it over top. Obviously, that's going to lead to bad things happening, and that's exactly what happened. He floated it.
So is it just kind of his decision making at times at this point?
Targeting. Really, it's just targeting. It's not so much a wrong read per se. It's more so putting the football with the right trajectory or in the right target or location. We talk about as quarterbacks all the time. Hey, listen, you got two types of things that you're looking for when you're aiming or when you're placing football: targets, which are on the body, and landmarks, which are on the field. And you got to understand which am I throwing to on certain routes and certain pass concepts, because there's a difference between the two. When you're playing against man teams like last weekend, we were running those slants. Those are on the body throws. If they're not thrown on the body, bad things can happen. And so that's what we ran into, an issue there. Some of those fade or vertical balls, if you're not throwing into a certain spot outside the numbers, defenders can get to that football. So those are the two things that we're constantly working on. If you come to practice, you'll see, hey, it's a target throw. This is a landmark throw. This is 18 to 22 on a hash. This is an upright, far upright, things of that nature. And so, yeah, and sometimes it just has to do with some of those are read routes, right? So sometimes it happens between 18 and 22 yards. Sometimes it happens between 14 and 16. And so the depth and landmark kind of changes depending on what the coverage is.
What are the challenges this week
of preparing for an opponent to play for the second time, or is it easier because you have familiarity with the personnel and you're just refreshing yourself, refreshing the players on what they've done schematically and defensively since the last time you played them?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to speak to some friends at this level and a level above who wound up playing teams for a second, third time in a season. I just kind of wanted to get their thoughts on that situation. And all the things that they shared with us, and some of the thoughts that we had prior to that was, you kind of understand base alignments, what their thoughts are in man coverage, zone coverage. Things that, you got to be prepared for the second time is any subtle adjustments that they may have shown in weeks past, you got to be prepared for. Because at this point in the season, you are who you are. How you get to where you need to be may change, but your identity will not change. And so, be prepared for those things. And then when you study the previous game of an opponent, you look at the things that you did really, really well, and then you try to complement those things with some other things that you've done well in weeks past. You look at what led to your failure or your lack of success on third down or whatever it is, and you really iron out those things. So this week is all about kind of editing what took place in the previous game versus those guys and trying to correct it and make it right going into this week's game.
Frankie Hickson had a really good game against New Mexico State on the ground. There were times when the passing game wasn't going, he would pick up 10, 15 yards in a chunk. Do you look to get the ground game going again as you had prior to Auburn and get that going, get into a rhythm and allow play action passes, allow the defense to come in so that way you can get vertical?
Yeah, certainly. As always, we're trying to establish the run. That's what you want to be able to do, and that will open some things up. And in some weeks, you got to establish the pass first in order to establish the run. So this week won't be any different than weeks prior. Just you got to be able to run the football and do so effectively on first and second down, and then if you have to on third down, do so. But be moving the chains on first and second down in the run game.
Coach, to piggyback a little bit off of Nick's question, we talked earlier that what it's like to be that guy, the adversity with quarterbacks. What have you worked on maybe mentally with Buckshot this week?
Well, really, we didn't do anything on the field on Sunday. Everything was more classroom related. Yesterday was a day off for our players. Today and tomorrow, and obviously Thursday, we're going to have an actual practice and be able to talk through some mental and physical things. This week's focus really for us, as a QB group, and really want to say as an offense as a whole, is getting back to the basics, right? For the past 4 weeks we played a different defense, a different thought process going into attacking those defenses. Playing against these guys, we can get back to the basics of what we've been really successful with throughout the entire season. And just be dialed in on those things. I mean, if you can, recall the alignments, the assignments, your technique, and then, how to execute at a high level, this makes things a lot easier because there's not much thinking. It's just more so reacting. When there's a lot of thinking, when there's a lot of reading and trying to make in-game adjustments, that's where you kind of, your play kind of goes down because you're thinking versus just playing.
What was your assessment of AGG's play Saturday? Obviously, this is a guy that wants to play at the next level, going up against that level of competition.
I thought he ran around. I thought he made made some plays down the field in terms of getting open. I thought he did a really good job of trying to play with that same speed and physicality as those guys. We moved him around. He was able to play in the slot. He was able to play outside. We motioned a little bit, and so he kind of got a taste of what it's like to play against, an elite guy on the perimeter of the field, try to play against an elite guy in the slot. And he got banged around a little bit in there, which was good for him. So now he knows the difference, between outside and inside, and some things that you got to be aware of. But I thought he fought really, really hard. I thought he made some plays when the opportunity presented itself. I wish he could have made some more. I thought there was times where he ran by a guy, made somebody miss, and created separation, and we threw the football out of bounds or was underthrown ball. But he definitely, he could play with those guys. There's no doubt about it.
I don't mean to keep making this all about Buckshot, but have you had any conversations with him where you just hey, you're still the man, do you have to have those conversations, or where is he kind of a confident guy himself?
He's naturally confident. I mean, I have no reservations about his talent and his ability. Neither does he. When you do what we do on offense, there's going to be days where they have your number and you got to keep fighting. And there's going to be other days where you put up 400, 500 yards of offense and everyone's like, well, that defense wasn't very good. How about, no, you were really good that day. Those guys just couldn't hold your can. So with that being said, nothing's going to change, and I didn't have any conversation with him trying to get him motivated to play any better. He wants to be better. There's no doubt about that. He's an internally motivated kid. He doesn't need me to get him fired up, souped up to go perform better. He wants to do really, really well on any stage against any opponent. And you can ask his teammates, you can ask him that himself. He'll tell you the same thing. He doesn't need me to get him fired up. My job is to get him coached up, And so this week, like I said, it's going to be about, getting back to the basics. What's my landmark? What's my target? What's my footwork? How do I get it there?
What about New Mexico State? What's different about them this time around, if anything?
Just the personnel. They got some guys back that weren't in, the first game, and so, and they've lost a couple games as well, like we have, and so, but they, very similar mindset, and regardless of what the score is, they keep fighting, they keep playing, So, getting some people back, as have we, and continue to fight. It's kind of the two things that we're pretty similar with at this point in time.
Do you like being able to play a team twice in one season and kind of having that chance for a little payback from the first time?
Yeah, it's exciting because it's really the first time I've had to do this, go against a defensive coordinator for the second time in a season. And, you kind of look at what you did against each other the first time and then kind of anticipate some of the thoughts that they may have the second time. And then be ready for, in the event of this, we need to get to that. So it's an exciting challenge. I'm glad I get an opportunity to do this as a play caller because it just prepares you for, other opponents down the line.